Then Islamicization would come in and change the people groups so that it could transition down the road into a socialist technocracy. Notice, in the 10s and 20s, this book is so important. I don't even know if it's out of print or if you can still get it. I mean, there's an entire chapter on using Islam in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s for where we are now. They were 100 years ahead of everybody else in planning this stuff. Now, I mentioned as well that, oh, well, this is just some British political thing. Who cares what a bunch of British political operatives are up to? No, you don't understand. The organizations that were all set up that run the world or the Western world, the Atlantis power block. When I say Atlantis power block, that doesn't mean not Israel. Obviously, Israel is part of that. It just means the way that international relations describes power blocks in the world. That's all it is. You had, for example, the erection of multiple international institutions that would promote all of these systems. And these are the systems pioneered by Lord Rothschild, Lord Milner,
erection of my company,
Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells. All of these are essentially the Fabian socialist institutions. So I'll list some of these. You may have heard of these. The Royal Institute for International Affairs. Their governing ideology is Fabian socialist. The League of Nations. The International Labor Organization. The International World Court, set up in 1920. The famous figures out of the UK like Lionel Curtis, Arnold Toynbee, people like John Maynard Keynes are all using Fabian ideology. So it doesn't really matter if you're a member of the society. That doesn't matter. It's just, if you have the ideology, that's the main point. The Council on Foreign Relations, 1921, set up with Rockefeller money, has as its ideology Fabian socialism. The Socialist Christian League in the 1930s. The World Bank, set up in 1944, set up by Fabian socialist ideology. The World Parliament Association, which eventually you get the United Nations in 1945. The International Monetary Fund, Keynesian Fabian socialist economics. The World Council of Churches, set up by Rockefeller money. The Aspen Institute. So again, biggest think tanks, all of these NGOs, think tanks, foundations, not all of them, but many of them have this governing basic ideology. And to be an actual member of the inner party is a different thing, right? And if you don't know, when George Orwell, who wrote, obviously, Eric Blair wrote 1984, the organization that he's fighting, or that he thinks he's fighting, is INGSOC, right? Everybody's seen INGSOC.
You should see the picture of this lifer attorney. Oh. Fucker looks like he's a predator against disabled fucking vulnerable victims and shit. Fuck you, pussy.
English socialism, INGSOC. What do you think he's talking about? He's talking about the Fabians because he was amongst these people. He's talking about Bertrand Russell, H.G. Wells. He's talking about George Bernard Shaw. He's talking about Beatrice and Sidney Webb. He's talking about Lord Rothschild. Those are the members that are the inner party people, you see. If you remember, in 1984, there's an outer party of all these people that think that they're working for the greater good. There's an inner party elite, a very small number of people who are actually aware and self-aware of what they're actually up to create a global technocratic socialist order. Ratu notes, for example, on page 103, George Orwell, who wrote 1984, was written with the Fabian Society's 100th anniversary in mind. This was one of the few works by an ex-Fabian that actually criticized their form of socialism, or INGSOC, English socialism. Although this book was intended as a, quote, satirical work, Orwell's book betrays an intimate knowledge of their movement, its leadership, their techniques, methods, and aims, and it accurately and uncannily predicted a future Fabian-controlled New World Order. That's what 1984 is about. It's about this. It's about Keir Starmer, Sadiq Khan, Blair.
Make sure you park underneath the automated license plate reader. Don't let it get you.
All those people. But it's not just them. It's David Rockefeller. It's Lord Rothschild. And it doesn't matter if they're capitalists. They see these things as ideological tools and technologies of control. And so, yeah, sometimes they'll fund a right wing group. Sometimes they'll fund an Islamic.
And of course, the automated license plate reader. It looks like a tablet full of light bulbs.
Group. Doesn't matter because the overall plan is much greater than some ideology. But it's these people, as Rupert Lowe has noted, and as he said to Joe, these are the people that pioneered 100+ years ago the idea of radically changing Europe and the UK.
Usually sitting next to another surveillance camera. You're like, what's that? What's that square rectangle looking thing? What's that tablet next to the camera? Oh, that's the thing that's going to get your home taken away if you live in your car and you're up for repo.
Also the West with Islam. And that's not antithetical to Jewish or Zionist interests because as we...
But don't worry. Even if the reader sees you before you see it, either just leave or stay in your vehicle. You can't tow a car that has a human in it. You can't even tow a car that has 3 dogs in it. And you better not try to pull it up onto your flatbed while my dogs are still in it, claiming I'm not able to get up there and jump in it. Because I'm going to, and you're going to set us down. Or it's going to be kind of like a big time, you don't want to call everything civil rights, but everything in court is either civil or criminal. So, I mean, you'd have a criminal and a civil rights suit on your case. It'd be a straight up cruelty to animals, most likely criminality, and then it'd be up to me to come up with the civil stuff on you. Sorry, I kind of flipped it. You were a car owner up for repo, and now you're the truck driver. So I just kind of switched in my mind real quick. Sorry about that, whoever's watching this. But anyway, write me, James Lee Gillenwater, in for mayor of Wichita, sheriff of Sedgwick County, governor of Kansas, and president of the United States. We need our militias. Our country needs 3,244 county militias. Some of those are territories and DC. DC being some land leased to the Rothschild and Vatican subcontracting companies by Maryland and Virginia. Why don't we say it like that instead of our capital? No, our capital's more like Philadelphia because that's where our Federal Republic workers were when they were murdered in the Civil War. It wasn't about freeing black people.
From Netanyahu,
the transatlantic Irish and African slave trades were ending anyway, and everybody knows it. I'm tired of the slandering of whites. We were 10% of the world 80 years ago. Now we're only 5%. We're being psyoped, folks. We're being lied to and exterminated. How much longer can you put up with it before you elect a guy like me, who is fully authorizing farmers to shoot down with shoulder fire rocket, sky sprayers, tick droppers, and mosquito releasers? Try that one on for size. People just don't even know what to feel. Oh, they don't know what to say. They feel instant love and a rush of liberty when I say that to them. When I tell them about some of my executive orders and how we will be living our lives in my state and attracting people from all around the world to our state. Kansas.
Doesn't care if all of the Palestinian Hamas people come to the U.S. Many rabbis have said Islam is the broom of Judaism. So they see it as something akin to a kind of Noahide position, right? It's not exactly the Noahide position. It doesn't mean that they like Islam. It doesn't mean that they're believers in Islam. It just means that they providentially see it as aiding ultimately.
But a one-time vehicle registration, not annually. If you are the new vehicle owner, you got to register it, even if the old person registered it last year. But you don't need to continuously pay the state over and over and over again for the same car you have all the time. If needing an updated registration is so key, why drop it for antiques? You just want more Chinese paper stamped at a private Jewish company out of my Americans. Not happening under my governorship. Yeah. Who working in the state government has a fucking problem with that?
The ascendancy of a Jerusalem, Tel Aviv based.
No more mandatory car insurance. There's no need for you to pay some other man so you can drive your own car. Not happening anymore. Excessive hand motion. But there's no need for you to pay somebody else so you can operate your own property. Same goes for home property tax, state tax, and sales. We're actually going to be the first state to eliminate property tax. No state has the God-given body parts to do so.
World order. In fact, Moses Hess even says that about Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, so Jerusalem mainly being the future center of world power.
I mean, they all actually do. No state has thus far demonstrated that they have the necessary bodily components to end property tax. Because guess what that would mean? Reinstating homesteading access. I think that's the blockage. They don't let us find land and keep it if we can work it within reason. That's called proper, regular, God-given homesteading rights. Just so happen to be written down by our founders somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Where did they go? They'll be back. Write me in for governor. James Lee Gillenwater. Write me in for mayor of Wichita, sheriff of Sedgwick County, governor of Kansas, and president of the United States. We're not playing around. A heat viper has arches. It's eyebrows. That's so you can tell the venomous ones.
Says
it's a snake. Alex Jones said, but if the snake has eyebrows.
So they have an idea of a Jerusalem-centric New World Order. Not every technocrat believes that or cares about that.
It's just proper sensing prey. Don't hate on a predator. He needs to eat too. a beautiful creation of God, an organism of the woods type of predator.
I think Zbigniew Brzezinski cared about a Jerusalem-based New World Order, but he certainly believed, like the Fabian socialists, in a future technocratic social order. Another one of the key figures here is the Bilderberg Group. This was created by Fabian socialists Joseph Redinger, Hugh Gaitskell, and Dennis Healy, together in collaboration with the Rockefeller family. That's explicitly in the Rockefeller's biography in David Rockefeller's memoirs. He has a whole chapter on his role in helping to prop up and create Bilderberg. He wasn't the only one. There was also former SS, Prince Bernhard was a key player in that. So that shows you that at that level, right, you can be.
So Jay's really going into some awesome. These are globalists' books, papers, the ways they run us. So just a few more minutes of this. We're going to Julie Green to see what God was telling her yesterday, the day before.
Of let's see, your Zionist ideology, you can be supra international. at that level of high tier finance. That's why the British Empire, for example, had no problem, or the West, I should say Western CIA, etc. They had no problem utilizing Otto Skorzeny and Reinhard Gehlen to train the Mossad. And that's all on record. That's all in Israeli papers. Again, at that level, things are above these localized microcosm ideologies that people are debating. Until we understand that what's at root here in terms of the battle in the West is not these stupid political parties of left and right. That's all part of the dialectic, right? I know most of this audience knows that the two-party duopoly is fake and gay, but I'm saying it's not even American two-party duopoly. It's the same structure in Canada. It's the same structure in the English Commonwealth nations that are all run by Fabian socialism. So Mamdani is the perfect example of exactly what you see with Sadiq Khan in London. Mamdani is that same model in New York. And dummies like Sneeko think that they're actually part of some real crusade for, human rights through promoting Islam, which is itself retarded. No, it's actually management by experts and technocrats, many layers and levels above people like Sneeko, right? Think about Hassan Piker, same situation, leftist, socialist, oh yeah, Islam's great. All these things are great. Bring all these people in. That'll help destroy America. The battle's not with America. The battle's not with white Christians. The battle is with these technocrats. And that's not antithetical to Zionist interest because Zionism is itself a socialist movement. It's one of the flavors of Marxism socialism. All of the Fabians were pro-dysgenics, not just eugenics of finding a good mate to pair with to have good offspring, but dysgenics, particularly getting rid of Western white Christians. George Bernard Shaw said, we must create a mongrelized public and get rid of the white Christian population. That is the only way that we would de-Christianize the West. He says that explicitly. So this is the ultimate atheist Islamic or leftist Islamic alliance. Muslims, they're not that typically perceptive or intelligent. They don't realize that they're being used as a puzzle, as a chess piece on the chessboard. But all of these people, whether it was Annie Besant of United Nations fame, that's the stupid witch, right? Or Bertrand Russell, they all said Islam could be a great tool to help us spread Fabian socialism. Now, again, this is kind of stupid, but they believe that they could actually convert Islam to a form of socialism. I don't think they will succeed in that, but that was their original mindset. They said, maybe we could take the idea of Muhammad and sort of craft him into a social justice. As crazy as it sounds, this is actually the way they thought about it. But whether or not that would be successful in terms of using Muhammad as a figure of socialism, it didn't matter because they were successful in basically bringing down the UK by starting with implementing and importing Islamic scholars who would teach at Oxford and other places, Sufism, and then that eventually turns into the importation of mass amounts of radical Sunnis. And you might have heard of groups like Antifa, which is anti-fascist. Well, it turns out the original Antifa were actually Fabian socialists, all the way up until the Third Way that was championed by Ed Miliband, David Miliband, others, and Tony Blair. So this is back in the 1990s, right? Blair thought that he could run on this platform of social justice. Okay, so even in the 1990s, they were promoting social justice, and that's the modern origin. I mean, it goes back to Lenin and a long time ago, but the modern origin of when you hear social justice warriors and these people that think that their job is to destroy Western civilization to create a fair order. No. That's actually coming from the 1990s era of the Fabian socialists and people like Tony Blair. So again, institutions like the Federal Reserve, the ideology behind the Federal Reserve is Woodrow Wilson. It is Keynesian economics. It is fiat-based currency. And that League of Nations model that H.G. Wells was so adamant in promoting even though the League of Nations failed, and even though the United Nations doesn't really have a whole lot of power behind it, those are the models that they want to bring for the future technocracy. So perhaps the League of Nations fades away and we get some other version. Maybe we get the League of Jerusalem order, right? Something like that. That could be what they push for in the next 20, 30, 40 years. It could be. But again, it's this super state international model that will be run by tech is this plan. For example, Zbigniew Brzezinski, when he wrote in his 1970, I think in the 72 book, Between Two Ages, I have it over here. Brzezinski.
Chinese paper stamped at a private Jewish company is not as important as liberty for Kansans.
Between Two Ages predicted a future where everybody was run by Skynet, where technocracy invades every area of your life. And we just seen this week, they're talking about the flock cameras that basically surveil everything, can be tapped into, watch you at all times. Everybody's new cars have all the microphones and the cameras all through them. This is literally what Orwell was warning about in 1984. But it's not just the Orwell, sort of heavy-handed top-down model. It's also the Brave New World model. Because guess what? Aldous Huxley is also in these same circles. In fact, Julian Huxley wrote The Philosophy of UNESCO, the official dogma of the United Nations. And he said, all that stuff that Tiny Mustache Man talked about, we got to rebrand all that. And we, Fabian socialists, will rebrand that as biometrics and technocracy. So don't get caught up in, I follow, neo-pagan Tiny Mustache Man because he arrested one of the Rothschilds. Yeah, but the same interest funded his rise. J.P. Morgan, etc. The Bank for National Settlements was originally the Reichsbank, and that becomes essentially an international clearinghouse for all of the same banking families. Bill Clinton, for example, represented the American version of the third way. That's Fabian socialist economic theory. So this is not a UK thing. This is all of Western society's most powerful institutions have this as their governing ideology. This is the governing ideology of the Council on Foreign Relations, of Bilderberg, and of Trilateral. Who was on the Trilateral Steering Committee? Jeffrey Epstein, recruited into that by David Rockefeller to be his legate, his attaché. Was he also, who else was he the legate and attaché for? The Rothschilds. He says it in multiple emails and letters, right? Or texts, I should say. He says to Peter Thiel, you do recognize I represent the Rothschilds. He says to Ariana de Rothschild, we know we can move the money when there's a crisis and let the dumb goy have the bags. They'll be holding the bags. That's the exact same thing the Rothschilds were doing in the 1800s, as we saw from the biography. So when we understand that all the top think tanks that we think of as, having all this power, Chatham House, Brookings Institute, Trilateral, Aspen Institute, Atlantic Council, these are all operating on a certain type of ideology. And even the academics that are recruited into them, do you think academics and people that get PhDs even in international relations, they don't read Carroll Quigley? When I checked out from my university, when I was in grad school, I checked out Tragedy and Hope from my university. You know how many times it had been checked out since it was in the library since the 1970s? Once. You know who the second person to check it out was? You boy right here. Nobody checked that book out. Nobody reads these things because academia is controlled to funnel you up a compartmentalized structure. So nobody in academia is going to be reading this kind of a book. Okay. And this is a very academic, scholarly text. It's a critical text, meaning that it's critical of the establishment and its ideology. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the information that you're getting from myself and these books, which are this whole giant shelf back here behind me, the whole thing is almost all elite books, their own books. I mean, some of these are conspiracy texts, but this is literally just all, I'd say 90% of this shelf is their stuff. This one too, by the way. Do you think that people in international relations in grad school are reading all of these? They might be reading a couple of these, They're not reading Brzezinski and Toffler and Kissinger and Rockefeller and Jacques Attali and H.G. Wells. They're not reading all this stuff. And the CIA guys, Miles Copeland, et cetera. They're not reading Moses Hess. They're not reading the Rothschild's biographies. They're focusing on niche areas. And then when they get up to a certain level, when you get recruited into Jeffrey Epstein level stuff, that's when you start to have a knowledge of the things that we're talking about. That's why it's not conspiracy theory. All the stuff that we talked about in these 4th hours from these elite texts over the last 6 years is literally all the stuff that Epstein was talking about in his emails and text messages. He's talking about to Larry Summers explaining him how the Vatican Bank works. Well, we've been covering the Vatican Bank for 10 years. We've been covering Vatican spies right now. I've got like 5 books on the Vatican Bank. We've been covering those forever. And you got Jeffrey Epstein explaining, no, Larry, it's a secret bank. Bankers run the world. This is the Alex Jones Show. I'm your guest host, Jay Dyer. Be sure and follow me on all my socials. And go to the Alex Jones store and buy those products. Alex Jones Network, Alex Jones Store. Get in there, get those products, support the info war. This is crucial to save Western civilization.
My fellow patriots, the first thing the globalists and the leftists do, they want to silence you, it's go after your merchant accounts. Go after your business payment system.
FirstUnitedPayments.com. Gosh, you really scratched something out of there, didn't you?
Your smart meter overcharges you $100 plus every month on electricity that never powered anything.
This is why no matter how much you
That's a good 5 seconds of glory. That never powered anything.
for 2020. Morning, Ray. Today is Thursday, and it's July 9th of 2026. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining today's live show today. And of course, there's a lot of things going on around the world, and a lot of people are struggling financially. And I want to encourage you, no matter how bad your finances may seem right now, and your bills may look piling up in your offices or wherever you put your bills, it looks like your bank accounts are going in the wrong direction. I want to remind you that we serve a God, first of all, who nothing is impossible for him. He's El Shaddai, he's Almighty God. He's also Jehovah Jireh, your provider. So many people in the body of Christ do not know God's promises are to provide. And the reason why I'm giving these encouraging scriptures is because this is where the Lord was leading me, obviously, but it's because of prophecy that's also coming. Mentality. This is never going to change. But I promise you, you stand on the word of God, it will change for you. Just like your healing will change for you if you're standing on healing scriptures. If you're standing on financial scriptures, it's the same way. It will change. Let's go to another scripture. Psalm 23 and verse 1.
Hey, can you give it a rest on that scratching? But I hope she's pulling ones that weren't manipulated by Schofield in 1905. And I think that's the nicest way to say it.
The Lord's my shepherd to feed, guide, and shield me. I shall not lack. He doesn't want you lacking in anything. He's only lack.
Christian architecture is bombed and burned all around the world nearly every day. Why isn't it being stopped? Why are we funding it? Why is it? Why are first of all, I think we're actually the Israelites, but why are the Israelis capturing Crusader castles in Lebanon? What's up with that, man? Why are we funding that?
And a sound mind. He doesn't want you lacking in your health. He doesn't want you lacking with your family. He doesn't want you lacking in your finances.
Israel's killing Jesus's friends' grandchildren right now, like today and yesterday and shit.
God doesn't want you to lack. He is your shepherd to feed. That means he supplies food. He's a shepherd to feed, to guide, and to shield. He also protects. I shall not lack. So when people say that God doesn't care or God expects us to be in poverty, he expects us to be in want, he expects us to be in lack. No, he does not. Too many scriptures in the Bible say otherwise. All right, let's go to Genesis 22:14. This is where he introduced himself as Jehovah Jireh. This is, of course, where Abraham and Isaac, and when Abraham was taking Isaac up the mountain, they had no other sacrifice. He was going to sacrifice Isaac. And he was about ready to do it.
That's perfect.
He stopped Abraham and said, "Stop." And then all of a sudden he looked, and there was a ram caught in the thicket. And of course, then he used that ram.
Let me know.
Instead of his.
That better one? Or?
Called the name of that place.
I mess with you guys stuff too much.
It is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord, it will be. Because
my ear is even a little farther from it than that phone is, but I bet my ear is better than that microphone.
I did. You notice that ram was not provided for Abraham before he almost gave his son up for sacrifice. It wasn't a week before. It wasn't a day before. It was like in the nick of time. It was the right time. Isaac was already tied up on that altar. And Abraham could have given up on God, but he knew even if he had to kill his son, God would raise him from the dead. Because he said in such a profound way, when he talked with servants, me and my son will return. But realistically, he was going up there to have to sacrifice him.
Thank God.
But he was bold in his faith and saying, my son or my lad and I will come down, we'll come back down here. We're going to return to you. And so if we knew with a shadow of a doubt.
Fine sequoia bark. Small branches.
That God still provides. It may look like it's past a due date. It may look like it's past the time and it's too late and nothing can change your situation or circumstance. God can just like that. So I want to encourage you. Do not give up.
No stuff. Sequoia bark on the smaller branches. Kind of smells like Nag Champa.
On the fact that God is your provider. There are other scriptures that talk about this too. God will provide. There's a lot of other scriptures and illustrations in the Bible where God showed he was the provider. Look at the widow woman with the oil. Look at the woman with the flour.
Don't try to eat it.
She's going to make a cake. When she said to the prophet, I'm going to make a cake and me and my son are going to die. And the prophet said, make me a cake first. And it didn't run out. All these different ways. The loaves and the fishes. That happened not once, twice. And he fed thousands. Water turning into wine. How many times does God have to prove to us? Look at the fish.
Go somewhere.
The boatload of fish. Look at when they needed taxes. He told the disciples, go down to the water. And the first fish you catch, open up its mouth. And there was money in it. All these different ways God showed and God proved he was a provider. So again, I want to encourage you. God does care about you. and your needs. That's why it says in Philippians 4:19, he will liberally supply, fill overflowing your every need according to his riches and glory by and through Christ Jesus. Proclaim and decree every day, I shall not lack. I thank you, Father God, that you are liberally supplying my every need. I thank you that every bill is paid. I've had to do this for a month on end, just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it until, well, I still do it today.
Still not.
But you liberally supply, fill the overflow on my every need. We don't stop, we continue to do that. Same thing with the ministry. God supplies our need. So no matter what is going on, I want you to know Jehovah Jireh as your provider. So I hope that encouraged you this morning. Okay. I made this prophetic word. It's called a banking collapse is on the horizon. A banking collapse is on the horizon. This is the second prophetic word I heard on July 3rd. The first one you heard yesterday on Wednesday. My children, a banking collapse is on the horizon. One that your enemies will throw everything at one time. They have planned the greatest financial death spiral this nation has ever seen. The Great Depression that the globalists manufactured is nothing compared to what they have planned for this nation in President Trump's second term. But the banks will instead reap the benefits of this financial disaster. They're the ones who will lose everything. A smoking gun is coming of the banks and all the deals they've made with the deep state. They thought they could keep them safe and made sure that the government covered any losses they would incur, protecting the deep state system.
Think diabetes is just about sugar? Think again. What if it's actually caused by a parasite hiding in your pancreas? Last year, a team of German researchers made a shocking
and all of its assets. Every corporation that received massive bailouts when the stock market crashed will be fully exposed. Dirty deals were made to keep these big corporations in play for the establishment to use them whenever it was necessary. That is why they were paid. These dirty deals and off the book deals, the ones that are made in the darkness, the ones that are made behind closed doors, these deals will soon crush
This will prevent that if I want to do that.
bring the death to them instead of the death to your financial system. The truth about the lobbyists on Capitol Hill will also be fully exposed. The poll with interest rates, inflation, bills are passed. Any information or anything to benefit big banks, big corporations, and the establishment. The puppets in Washington get paid to protect the system at all costs. The entire establishment financial system is breaking. It has been crumbling since my David's first term. One reason they want him dead so much. They're hemorrhaging money everywhere they turn. They're losing control over all they had at once. They just need a little bit more time, and this nation would have fully been theirs. The globalists didn't fully count on my church waking up and getting back into politics. They thought with all their lies, the churches, with all their informants behind the pulpit,
Stop.
they didn't agree with you, children. Then my David came along on the scene with your approval. His popularity is something that scares your enemies in a way that they have never feared before. They have never seen anyone be attacked by them without retiring from politics. Usually someone would just quit. But my David
like that jump off there.
all the assassination attempts. He is stronger now, and he's fighting back with more power than he had before. The establishment doesn't know how to handle the president. He is nothing like anyone they've ever experienced before. The more the deep state puppets open their mouths, the more mistakes they make. Your enemies are in a state of panic and they are very confused. Things are becoming worse for them by the day. Your enemy's political system is collapsing. Their spiritual system is failing. Your enemy's financial empire will fall like the Egyptian. Drugs, child trafficking, fraud, everything is going to shake. Everything will be exposed. Your enemies will experience a death of their system, just like
I know what it is.
felt the death the angel of death came.
I know what it is.
Goldman Sachs will be exposed. JP Morgan Chase will be exposed. Capital One will be exposed. Citibank will be exposed. Bank of America will be exposed. All of them have secrets. All of them have committed fraud.
Get it back.
All
Go.
of
Get it back.
them will shake.
Go.
They will never
Brad,
be gaining power over this nation again. Stocks will crash and collapse in a shocking way. But remember, I am bringing in something new for you, my children. Your enemy's financial walls are coming down in unprecedented and surprising ways for your freedom. It's time for you to receive the spoil of this war against you, says the Lord of hosts. This is like the second prophecy. I'm almost positive it's the second news turn. Well, God is talking about the spoils of war again. I think people forget that there are spoils of war in any war. And in the Bible, you can see who reaped the benefits of the spoils of war. If God didn't care, why would he talk about full justice? If God didn't care, why would he give his people the spoils of those wars and those battles they fought? If he didn't care about the finances and how much they had or didn't have. God would rather the finances be in his people's hands, in his children's hands, than in the enemy's hands. Because it's in the enemy's hands, they do more evil. But you have in the church, you can't talk about money. Well, why not? Why shouldn't we? Be that all we talk about? Of course not. But if somebody's stealing from us, we're just going to say, okay, I'm sorry, we're the body of Christ, and we're just going to have to allow to be plundered. We can't say anything about it. We just got to be quiet.
Think if Jesus and the Crusaders allowed themselves to be plundered all the time, the establishment wouldn't fear them so much. Like, they just have to destroy Christianity, annihilate our original actual Bibles, destroy our maps of the world for some reason. Like, just because Jesus is hanging on the cross at the center in Jerusalem, you can't give us access to it? Or is it all the rest of the stuff on the map you don't want us to see? Our buildings. What do you think these old world or previous civilization stone construction style buildings are? They used to have antenna at the top that charged our blimps and airships just 120 years ago. Templar. Christian crusading Knights Templar fleeing Vatican persecution after we beat the Muslims for them. They turned on us. The Church of Satan. I don't know. Anything that's not the way of living Jesus Christ taught us, which they don't even want us to know anymore. And have they ever even told us some of it? Whatever.
When God said, when a thief has been caught, he's got to give it back. Why would God expect you, if you've been stolen from on a continual basis by your own government, why would he say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do anything about it?
Motherfuckers must be too
That's
good.
not the will of God at all.
Motherfuckers must be too good to learn how to make coffee in the car.
The will of God is for you to get what has been stolen from you back.
Hope you got this fucking shit mastered already then.
He wants the enemy to pay for what he's done. All right, let's go to Genesis 14 through 16 out of the ERV translation. This is after Lot was taken, okay? When Abram learned that Lot was captured, he called up his family together. There were 318 trained soldiers. He led the men and chased the enemy all the way to the town of Dan. That night, he and his men made a surprise attack against the enemy. They defeated them and chased them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Verse 16. So Lot was taken. Abram is going after them.
So in other words, we actually founded this country as Knights Templar. long before 1776. That was the second continuation of the revolution. First, we beat the Vatican to find this land peacefully with the Native Americans and built all the castles and churches and cathedrals, whatever, that were in North America that they don't want us to know about. Like the ruins called Ha Ha Tonka in Lake of the Ozarks. Thank you.
Then Abram brought back everything the enemy had stolen. And this is important. Underline that word, everything. He didn't just get some things back, he got everything back. The enemy had stolen as well as the women and servants, his nephew Lot, everything Lot owned. The enemy had to pay for it. He had to give back. The enemy had to give back everything they just stolen. And you know, God helped Abram and his soldiers. All right. If you don't just want to believe that one, let's look at another one. 1 Samuel 30, verse 6. You guys know this one. This was David and Ziklag when he came back. I'm not going to read the whole story again. When he came back with his army, he just come back from battle. Ziklag was burned up. The women and children were gone. The money was gone.
So, in my opinion, we first founded this country in like the 1400s or something, just after the Crusades, whenever that was. So 1200s, 1400s, if I had to guess, but I do need to look it up. Somebody please comment or chat what you think the closer the year was. And then, so we beat the Vatican in the 12 or 1400s after we beat the Muslims to found this land peacefully with the Native Americans. And then we founded it a second time after beating Britain. Anyway, those two butthurt groups they teamed up. They teamed up with, apparently some oligarchs in Germany or something to overthrow us in the Civil War. They killed our Federal Republic workers in Philadelphia and slandered the South. The Irish and African transatlantic slave trades were ending anyway, and everybody knows it.
He was gone. Everything was gone. They wept. Then David's army wanted to turn on him. And it says David was greatly distressed. Yeah, because he's one fought in battle. He was tired. He wanted to go home and relax and see his wife and kids. And all of a sudden now, all the guys wanted to see their wife and kids. I mean, they wanted to see their families. And all of a sudden, they got nothing. They all were taken. And David was greatly distressed. Well, yeah. And the men spoke of stoning him because the souls of them were bitterly grieved, each man for his sons and daughters. But David encouraged and strengthened himself in the Lord God himself, or the Lord his God. David lost stuff too. But all the soldiers were losing their women and children. They lost everything. And then David, instead of staying in that sorrow and staying in that distress, he encouraged himself and strengthened himself in the Lord. That's what we do when it looks like the enemy is plundered and stolen everything from us. The enemy did not leave anything. They took everything away from them. Sorry for my dog making noises with her bell. All right, let's go to 1 Samuel 30 and verse 8. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? The Lord answered them, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them and without fail recover all. If God didn't care about them recovering what had been stolen from them, then why did God say to David, pursue, overtake, and you will recover all? We have been in a battle. The enemy's stolen peace in our minds. They've stolen our health from us. They've stolen our children from us. They've stolen finances from us. They've stolen our freedoms. And why this time?
4 out of 5 American homes are being overcharged 30 to 50% on their electric bills right now. Your smart meter is doing it.
Well, people say, well, God's not doing anything about it. I don't understand that reasoning. It's not scriptural. Whenever God's people were in bondage, God saved them. Whenever God's people were plundered or stolen from, God made sure they recovered what was stolen from. All right, let's go to verse 19. Nothing was missing, small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David recovered all. This is another example. Abraham got everything. David got everything. All right, let's read another example. 2 Kings 7, 6 through 10. This is again where Samaria was surrounded by the Syrian army. And the 4 leprous men said, we're just going to go up because if we stay here, we're going to die. If we go into the city, we're going to die. If we go to our enemies, we're going to die. Hey, let's go try to go to our enemies and see if they're going to spare us. There was war. There was famine. There was shortages. There was no food. There was no nothing. They were in a very bad state in Samaria. And so when the lepers, 4 leprous men, walked to the Syrian camp, verse 6, the Lord had made the Syrian army hear a noise of chariots and horses and noise of great army. So again, if God didn't care, then why would he have made those horses or those men sound like horses and chariots? What was the point of that? If he didn't care about...
What example of selective mind speak or natural speech to skull technology or voice to skull? 200s are in the woods. One of them hears a giant ceremony of drumming and like singing, pretty much a Native American style, some kind of Indian drum, and his buddy doesn't hear a thing.
Samaria, and about if they had food, if they had money, if they had water, then why would he have 4 leprous men walk up to a Syrian camp, have them sound like horses and chariots in a great army?
And that could have been Sasquatch phenomena,
Scared?
which our government simply mimics and tries to reverse engineer, just like the downed UFO craft.
The ever-living crap out of these people, if you want to say that. I mean, just scare them to the point where they take off and run. And it says, they said to one another, the king of Israel has hired the Hittite and the Egyptian king to come upon us. So the Syrians arose and fled in the twilight in their tents, horses and donkeys, even the camp as it was, and fled for their lives. All right, let's go to the next verse, verse 8. And when these lepers came to the edge of the camp, they went into one tent and ate and drank and carried away silver and gold and clothing and went and hid them in the darkness. And they entered another tent and carried from that also and went and hid it. This was spoiled of war. There was silver and gold in there. There was food in there. There's everything they needed right there. All right, let's go to the next verse. I think it's 9 and 10, yeah. And then they said to one another, we are not doing right. This is a day of glad and good news, and we are silent and do not speak up. If we wait until daylight, some punishment will come upon us for not reporting at once. So now let's come up and go into the king's household. Next verse, verse 10. Again, they're just like, hey, we have got to say something right now. So they came and called the gatekeepers of the city, and they told them, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was neither sight nor sound of man. There were any of the horses and donkeys tied in the tents as they were. But God arise, and the enemies be what? Scattered. The enemies scattered, and they didn't even take their horses and donkeys. They took nothing with them. Nothing at all. They left everything there. That was God's plan. All right, let's read in verse 16.
Look, our mic quality changed.
2 Kings 7, verse 16. Then the people went out and plundered. That was the whole point. There was a war. And at the end of it, God's people plundered the enemy. This is the third example. And said to the Syrians, to the measure of the fine flour, and sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, as the Lord.
It's not exactly the Afghanistan Hillary pullout, huh?
Had spoken through Elijah. So God had prophesied through Elijah what was going to happen. It didn't look like it was going to happen the day before, and it happened. It was miraculous. It was unprecedented, you would say. 4 leprous men, sound
like
like
metal.
an army. I would say that's unprecedented.
This coffee can does smell like metal. That's about it.
Circumstances. All right, let's go to another one. Another example of God's people plundering the enemy's camp and the enemy's army. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 25. You guys know what happened. Jehoshaphat and all of his men, and they all heard about this great army coming up against them. So he had the women and children, everybody in Judah, start praising and or praying and seeking God. And then after they did that, then they started praising and worshiping him. God set up ambushes against the enemy, and all the enemies turn on each other and kill each other. So God's people didn't have to lift a finger. In verse 25, when Jehoshaphat and his people came to take the...
That makes me think of the grandpa from Rugrats, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. You know, Stu's father. Tommy's grandfather. But what about Lipschitz? Tommy's mom's therapist, or he was just on TV. It was just like the therapist that pops up on the TV, I think. Dr. Lipschitz. So you know he's telling you the truth. But one episode comes to my mind quite often. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of lizardy, of thee I sing. When Angelica was practicing for the talent show and did it or whatever, I think that was correct. Land of lizardy. Woo!
Well,
Heavy hitter.
much cattle, goods, garments, precious things, which they took to themselves, more than they could carry away, so much that there were 3 days in gathering the spoil. There was so much of this, it took them 3 days to get it all. Again, if God didn't care about spoils of war, then why is this another example about God giving his people the spoils of war? 2 Chronicles 20 and verse 29.
Oh,
And the fear of God came upon all kingdoms of those countries when they heard that the Lord had fought against the enemies of Israel. There's going to be a lot of fear in people saying what God is going to do. Not just for this nation. It's going to be for other nations. It's going to be unprecedented. And it's going to be miraculous. Exodus 12, verse. I don't know. Israel in Egypt for over 400 years. And the
it
Egyptians
doesn't have to be
stole their
perfect.
money through taxation.
It's not going to be perfect.
And they made them poor. And they made them their slaves. And it was great. Great story. And God freed them. It was even greater because not only were they free and God healed them, but they also got the money back. The Lord caused the Egyptians to be kind to the Israelites, so the Egyptians gave their riches to the Israelites. You say, yeah. Not on a good day that would ever happen. Yes, it will. The Egyptians gave their riches. They're like, here, take it. We don't care. Spoils of war. That was a horrible bondage and slavery that God went through for over 400.